What on earth is going on at the BBC? Today, a bargain hunt art dealer pleaded guilty to 8 terror offences.
Mr. Ujiri, are you embarrassed to have sold artwork to a man linked to Hezbollah? Any comment, Mr. Ujiri? You've sent £140,000 worth of artwork to a man you knew was linked to terrorist group Hezbollah. Any comment, Mr. Ujiri?
Charlie Peters there in his element, wasn't he? But Mr. Ujiri sold paintings to a man who funds Hezbollah. He was granted bail, so he just walks out of that courtroom, carry on with his life until he gets sentenced later on. It comes after this.
Morning. You all right? Have you ever wondered what you'd do if your world was destroyed?
Well, the BBC was accused of doing Hamas propaganda, weren't they? That lad there was the son of a terrorist minister. Now, I know what you're all thinking, OK? Maybe the BBC could relaunch one of their most popular shows. Get ready for Homes Under the Hamas. Oh, fantastic. You can see it now, can't you? It needs a little bit of renovation. It's a doer-upper, but, you know, there we go. Anyway, maybe this guy could present it.
The Israeli position is that what is happening in Gaza is a response to the slaughter and capture of innocent Israelis on October the 7th. And
which was awful, which was truly awful.
And that full context needs to be there when discussing what's going on.
But that's not the full context, is it? Because the full context starts way before October the 7th, doesn't it?
Look, if Gary Lineker's a no, I've heard that this guy needs a new gig.
What do you say to your victims, Hugh Edwards?
Talking of paedophiles, the BBC unveiled a renovated statue created by the notorious paedophile Eric Gill outside their headquarters, and they even put a protective screen around it. And of course, they've just launched this bad boy.
A team of investigative journalists here at the BBC. We are also a new brand, and we are a physical location above the newsroom in London. And the point of the team, as you said, is to verify video, to fact check, to counter disinformation.
Well, unfortunately for the hard-working team at BBC Verify, they weren't able to verify this.
I don't think anyone's talking about stopping the power of the sun. I think generally it's about what impact can be had on man-made emissions, which are contributing to climate change.
And how much do they contribute? About 3 or 4%, Fiona, as you well know.
The BBC quietly edited a Question Time show after host Fiona Bruce made a false claim about climate change whilst trying to fact-check Reform's Richard Tice. Look, my questions are these. Is the BBC really fit for purpose? And how does a man who pleads guilty to 8 terrorism charges walk free from court while people are being jailed for mean tweets?
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cybercriminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GBNews discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GBnews to start protecting yourself digitally today.
Let's get thoughts of my panel here, just to get a flavour for the room, really. I mean, does anyone think anyone should be going to prison for mean tweets? Do you think? No. Do you think that maybe if you plead guilty to 8 terrorism charges, you probably should be banged up? Okay. Right, OK. So lots of common sense in the room already here, I think. Adam, I'll start with you. You know, how's this guy walk free? All right, he might face sentencing later on, don't get me wrong, but, I mean, granted bail, crack on with your life, mate.
Yeah, look, for me, he's clearly a danger. Hezbollah are a prescribed terrorist organisation in many countries, dozens around the world. They're also very linked to Iran. Iran are really our enemy in the world right now. They hate us. They want to get rid of Israel. This man has indirectly helped fund terrorists, and he should be in prison, in my opinion. But again, this is another wrong-un at the BBC. As you've said, we've had paedophiles, we've had terrorist fundraisers now, and we've had dog rapists, which I've brought up on the show before.
Sadly, isn't it?
What is wrong with the BBC? Why do they use such degenerates and such bad people? And remember, it's us that pay for it. It's our licence fee, so there's big questions to ask of the BBC.
I'll just come in and say, look, obviously this court case that you've all seen today, so the guy was a contractor at the BBC, so he's not on a full-time employment or anything like that. But, you know, still, not a particularly great look, is it? Maybe BBC Verify could do a better job, Christo?
I mean, look, I worked at the BBC in the past as well.
We better check you.
I'm not... I love dogs. Well, not that much, but I love dogs. Look, I think he should be in prison. Absolutely, 100% he should be in prison. It is ridiculous, and it's ridiculous that he was knowingly, because he's pleaded guilty, he was knowingly, like, passing on all of this money. The BBC, I like EastEnders. That's basically the only thing I watch. And I think that the BBC make a rod for their own back because they are so entrenched in the licence fee, and the licence fee opens them up to all of this complete idiocy. Because if we weren't by law obliged to pay, then we could simply say, well, OK, well, this channel isn't doing due diligence, we switch off, we can turn over. But you can't. They have got to look at the way they're funded. And I don't say that, like I said, as someone who hates the BBC, I say it as someone that is if we don't do that, we're never, ever going to solve the problem.
Jane, do you think the BBC's fit for purpose?
I think this is just really unfortunate, and we have heard a string of really unfortunate instances, but I do value the BBC. They're our national broadcaster. If you think about things like the proms, the coronation, we can all have our memories of things they do really well, but they need to stamp this sort of stuff out. You know, we don't proscribe groups for no reason, and he did admit he knew this guy was funding Hezbollah. And I think it's just terrible. I think he should be in prison. But he did surrender his passport.
He did surrender his passport, yeah. Look, Barry, lots to come back to here. Where are you on the idea that someone who pleads guilty to this kind of thing is allowed bail, whereas we have had people who have been locked up for 31 months for mean tweets?
Well, let's not revisit that one. But section...
no, we should revisit it, Barry.
OK, Section 21A of the Terrorism Act 2000, it relates to the disclosure of information. OK? The section imposes a duty on individuals to report information that could help prevent acts of terror. OK? The guy knew that he was Hezbollah, and he didn't actually give him money. He sold him works of art, right? He had a duty to report, and he is absolutely guilty of not reporting, and he's admitted that. When a judge considers whether they should grant bail or not, they take into account a number of factors, one of which is he a risk to the public? Is he likely to further offend? And I think it's not unreasonable to suppose that in this case, the judge thought he's not a risk to the public and he's not likely to further offend. He was an antiques dealer, an art dealer. He was not a terrorist himself. He committed an offence under the Act. That offence was the failure to disclose. So, now, if you want me now to go on and attack the BBC, we can deal with.
Say whatever your honest view is.
Barry, was Lucy Connolly a risk to the public for her tweets? Was she a risk?
No.
Was Hugh Edwards a risk to the public? Yes, he was. He should be in prison. Now, I want to see a country that locks dangerous people away.
Do you think that Ujiri is dangerous?
Pardon?
Do you think this guy is dangerous?
Do you think Ujiri is dangerous?
Knowingly funding terrorists is a dangerous man.
There's a question about what I will say.
He didn't. Sorry. Again, Adam, I always believe let's look at the facts, okay? He didn't fund terrorists. He sold art worth 140,000.
So he helped
eight
fund
items of art to somebody.
Yeah, so he facilitate them getting
artworks, not money.
Yeah, but that's still assets. That's still and it's still terror. And I think that there is a double standard.
Well, okay. What I will say again is this guy. Two things to say here. Barry's right. So he sold the guy artwork, so he's not going into his own wallet and just openly donating to Hezbollah. And also he's a contractor at the BBC, so he's not a full-time employee there. What I will say though is, I think in the court of public opinion, you would probably find this guy warrants a prison sentence. Now, he may well go and get a prison sentence, but he's been bailed in the meantime. Yet again, it feels as though in this country we're seeing some people walk out of court for more serious crimes, Jane, than some people are being condemned to a couple of years.
I think Lucy Connolly is becoming the prime example, and we have to talk about this because everybody thinks it's nonsense.
Look, I'll go one thing. I'm big on knife crime. We have people that are caught with machetes twice or 3 times and they are given suspended sentences.
Ridiculous.
We've got a mother that is 41 years of age and she is in prison for 31 months. She is no danger to the public. They could have done it in another way, whether it be a tag or a fine or a course. She did not have to go to prison.
And the Labour councillor who called for people to have their throats cut.
That's still an active case.
It's an active case, but it's been kicked down the road.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I get what you're trying to say, but obviously it's contempt of court rules and all of that stuff. But I mean, look, I suppose Barry, when you look at this now as well, just knocking it onto the BBC itself, you've got quite a few instances there that we've seen where maybe they've not really done their due diligence. And is Christo's point right that if you're going to put yourself on a pedestal, you're going to be taxpayer funded, you're going to have things like BBC Verify, we are the bastions of truth and the representatives of British broadcasting around the world, you need to do better.
Look, I look at what are the key functions of the BBC. Public information, and it's also getting our message of the UK out to the rest of the world. And I look at that part of the BBC, which is the World Service. And I know that the work that the World Service does in countries like Afghanistan, Iran at the moment, exactly what Adam was saying, one of the key threats to this country, the work that the World Service is doing there is phenomenal because they are disseminating truth into a country where it's very difficult to access it. So I think the BBC, in many, many cases, does a wonderful job, particularly in the World Service. And I think, people can pick on individual people who've been employed by the BBC, who've done things wrong. Absolutely. That happens in all walks of life. I don't think you can just tar the BBC with that brush.
Let's also remind the viewers that the BBC has had to apologise about 14 or 15 times for their coverage of the Gaza and Israel conflict. They put misinformation out several times and have had to apologise. Our state broadcaster, which it technically is because we have to pay for it, gets things wrong, and that doesn't look good on the UK.
All broadcasters do, Adam. All broadcasters do.
Well, one thing that I personally find a little bit annoying, to say the least, about the BBC is that it gets to kind of mark its own home, right? So we are obviously accountable to Ofcom, and, rightly so, by the way, I think people should be accountable to someone, all right? I don't always agree with what they do, obviously, but we should ultimately probably be accountable to someone, whereas the BBC very often gets to make a whopping great big mistake, and in fact, it's done it about GBNews a couple of times, made huge mistakes, no balance, nothing about that, just an unrelenting slagging off match about us, and then about 2 weeks later, someone will pop up and go, oh yeah, sorry about that, we got that wrong, and they all move on. And you think, well, if it was us, we'd be crucified for that kind of stuff. But anyway.